Hello, everyone. We are back with the Chenault Solutions Speaker Series, really leaning in on all of those business functions and the capacities that you need as a nonprofit leader, especially those that we dig deeper into within the Strategy Academy. But I wanted to invite some friends of mine, clients of mine, colleagues of mine to share their experiences with you as nonprofit leaders, as leaders of organizations, businesses, projects, initiatives, various sectors. Okay. And today with me, I have Cassandra Webb. I am so excited to have her here with me today. I have known Cassandra, I think, for almost 10 years, I think, back to NC3 Days, which was a community organizing initiative in Louisville, Kentucky, back in the day. Since then, she has worked with Louisville Urban League, Metro United Way, and now she is with Cities United. She is an advocate for Black youth, their families, and their communities. As the director of innovation and research with Cities United, she leads a team of dedicated individuals in developing and implementing new strategies focused on systems and individual level change. Okay, a national network of mayors focused on making sure all of our children grow up in communities that are safe, healthy, and hopeful. She has co developed and coordinated the organization's Young Leadership Fellowship for 18 to 24-year-old leaders across the country, working with their city mayors, city leaders, and community organizations to develop violence prevention plans and strategies. In late 2019, though, she transitioned into building a people-centered approach here locally called the Russell Place of Promise, which is a justice-based initiative developed and incubated by Cities United, Louisville Metro Government, and the Community Foundation of Louisville, focused on Black wealth building and investment without displacement in the Russell neighborhood. So, everyone, I want to introduce to you Cassandra Webb.
Thank you, Simon. In one transition that has been made probably about like a year ago, top of last year, is that now my title is Director of Place of Promise Initiative at Cities United. So shifted from that innovation and research, still doing innovating in things and researching, but just with that new title.
Okay, then. So, let's talk a little bit about your experiences as a nonprofit leader since you have really entered the space, thinking back to when you first entered the space and a couple of tidbits that you have learned over the years, because I'm sure it goes back further than 10 years. And I want people to really get a good sense of who you are as a nonprofit leader and the experience you have within this sector.
Yeah. So, I would like to start with like one. I am a Louisville girl. I'm a Louisville Black girl. Born and raised in Louisville. Louisville has my heart. It's my home. It's where I grew to be who I am today. And it's really been the people of the community that have helped like hold and mold and shifted me to become the leader that I am. And some other background I guess I can give is my upbringing. So I really like attribute a lot of like my business administrative skills, my admin skills, my way of like how I operate myself in the business space to my mom. My mom has worked at U of L for over 40 plus years. And I remember like sitting with her in the office and like, typing on a typewriter, like work for her. She would like keep me busy and asking me to do those things for her and running mail across campus. And I just observed and watched her in the workplace as well as when she was in grad school. I observed her studying and working with her classmates. And so my mom, I just attribute so much of my business acumen to her. I mean, really understanding how the workplace operates. And then I also want to acknowledge my father. My father was such a family man and such a hard worker. And I I look at like how I am passionate and how much time I dedicate to my craft. And I acknowledge him as being somebody that I could observe that was just like, I'm gonna get this work done. I'm gonna make sure that I'm good, but also that my family and my loved ones are also good. And so I think that context is really important because my parents were really helpful in crafting who I am today and putting me in places and spaces that allowed me to explore my creative side, and all the arts programs and writing programs, but also allowed me to see community, the importance of community from this family sense, friend sense, and also just like the neighborhood that I was around in the Louisville community as a whole. Um, so about now it's 11 years ago, I really started my career in doing community engagement work, and doing organizing work by working at NC3, Network Center for Community Change. And there I started as AmeriCorps Vista, working with young people at the Academy of Shawnee, building out their college closet for first generation college students, doing Chalk Talk, which is like all over the community, writing positive and educational messages with young people, and doing door knocking, knocking on thousands of doors in the Shawnee and the Parkland neighborhood, and telling folks about summer opportunities for young people, but also like adults, how they can get back into the education system. And so that year and a half long experience with NC3 opened my eyes and doors in so many ways, that I am so excited that I decided to go down that path when I got out of undergrad, instead of like going into a grad school program and saying, I kind of like this, I'm kind of interested, and being kind of like half committed to it, where I decided to go down this path of like, let me have the experiential, not gain experiential knowledge and build these connections to then, take me on a trajectory that I never thought of. So from NC3, have been able to work with a lot of youth programs, youth organizations across the city, a lot of different nonprofits from Louisville Urban League, worked there for 4 years. I've worked with Metro United Way. I've worked with Coalition Supporting Young Adults, CSYA. A lot. And in 2018, I started working with Cities United, and did start off working with the Young Leader Fellowship Program, from 2018 to about 2019. And then in late 2019, early 2020, I started to transition into Russell Place of Promise. And that is where I've dedicated about 90% of my time for the past couple of years, into building out this initiative. And it has blossomed to a place of like wild beyond my dreams, and would not have been able to do it without the support of team members that are dedicated to the mission, and the vision of building Black wealth, as well as the leadership that I have received from other community members and within the organization.
Thank you, Cassandra. So, we are here today to talk about good governance, and considering your extensive history in not only managing projects, but engaging people. I'm excited to talk about this with you because I know that this is a competency and a capacity that nonprofit leaders really do need. So, in your experience and from your vantage point, what does good governance mean?
Mm. So governance, like, so before we were getting prepped for this call, I'm like, let me just like run down some definitions, making sure like I'm grounded. And so like as I was looking at like, governance is like how you are able to like, control. Oftentimes it's the word control. And that is definitely has some negative connotations. But the way that I'm shifting and have been shifting, looking at governance, is really how people operate and communicate with one another, how they treat one another within the space, whether that's team members, as well as organizations, how they partner with other organizations, how they interact with funders, how do they stay mission and vision aligned? So do the operations within the organization make sense for the mission and vision? If you are saying that you're dedicated to this particular goal, are you moving in alignment with your actions, your behaviors, the statements that you're releasing, the way that you treat your employees, the way that you treat the participants in your programs or the people that step foot in your doors. How are they being treated? How do they feel connected? And how do, when you run into issues, challenges, barriers, how are you then able to hold people accountable? Whether that's you yourself as an organizational leader, or it's your team members, or it's a partner or a funder, how are you holding the space of accountability? And I've learned a lot over the past few years about like what to do well, how to do those things well, and how, what direction not to go in. And a lot of that had to do with observing other leaders. One of the biggest things I would say, some tips I would give for anyone that is in leadership position, if you are not paying attention to other people in the field, or either outside of your field, you should be right now, like observing how are they, interacting with folks, how are they making their decisions, what's informing the decisions that they're making, because you can learn a lot. And so I have had the opportunity to really be able to observe some powerhouses like Sadiqa Reynolds, formerly of the Louisville Urban League, Anthony Smith, the executive director of Cities United, and so many other like Black leaders. And so I observe a lot, and I take in what I'm seeing, and I'm able to see if like that really makes sense for me to do, like operate, and how do I want to lead as Cassandra Webb? And so I think observation is so important to do, and having that self-awareness of like, and constantly, or on a consistent basis, really evaluating yourself, to say, this is a really good way that you approach this situation, or you handled this decision, and what was like not necessarily the best way, or how could you have done it differently? And I think that also takes, to be self-aware and be able to hold yourself accountable, takes a lot of confidence. And leaders that don't have that sense of confidence of like, yeah, I can make a mistake, but I'm willing to say, I'm good, but I make mistakes here and there, and I'm really willing to like rectify those decisions. That takes a lot of like, a self-awareness and a sense of confidence that it's okay.
So, do you have any experiences that you can share with us that have taught you lessons about good governance, like any specific anecdotes or stories?
Yeah, I think I will speak to like right now with Russell Place of Promise. That has been our focus, is like, how do you do community governance? Like if we're saying we are an initiative that values residents, and we value their voice, we value their leadership, then we need to move in alignment with that. And so I think some examples that have come up is like, as we are in this incubated space and we have this certain timeline and we have this kind of like set resources and finances, there can be a sense of urgency that happens, like, oh, we got to get these things done. We got to meet this deadline. We got to do this by a certain time. And if we don't, and it's just this like, that causes a sense of anxiety within myself as well as other members of my team. And I think we have been sometimes moving too fast out of pace with the people that we're saying that we're valuing with residents. And so how do we acknowledge that? Or before we even get to where it's like we're really out of pace, how do we stop and pause and say, actually, we may be feeling this anxiety internally. We may have these external deadlines that we're trying to meet, and internal deadlines. How do we just stop and pause and say, you know what, we need to either ask for an extension, we need to like think about what we can do within this time frame, and do those things and execute it, and then just explain like we had these big lofty dreams and we weren't actually able to get to that, and being transparent with whoever is holding us accountable to that, whether that is residents themselves, or that's funders, or that's other partners, and also what we've learned is like slowing down. We have to get comfortable with slowing down and being okay. And there is a lot of struggle with that. That even with like my team members, I try to remind them like, hold me accountable. So if like I'm like, yo, we got to get this done by this time, it's like I need those reminders from you all to say, actually, hold on, like, are we really ready for that? Is that really where we need to be right now? And so there's been a few times that has happened over the years, just working on this project that really is trying to be different than other organizations. And yeah, they have been really big learning lessons for me.
So, when people usually think about governance, they think about pushing paper, right? Making sure that the nonprofit has all of its federal qualifications and requirements completed, making sure that there are the forms in place, the bylaws, the charters. And I want to talk about, because I was able to peek in a little bit when you began. Well, I think it might have been the second one, actually, the second community cohort that you had. Because the community, when Cassandra talks about community involvement, she means community led, right? Like, there's no question about the fact that Russell residents are the main drivers of the work. And so when it comes to governance, how have the folks you have engaged shaped how governance looks, and how have you managed the clarity of the project, which may sometimes have started one way, right, but may have ended up another because that community input is so necessary?
Yeah, so that requires slowing down and being intentional. And through being intentional, it's really thinking about, for us, it's been like, how do we do some shared learning together and get on the same page? So oftentimes, like, when you do community engagement or community involvement, people have different definitions, to your point, right? So an organization can say, we're doing community engagement, we're doing community involvement, and they just really mean they throw events, right, for the community, which are good events, or they give out like donations to people, which is, that's good. But if you're really talking about that you're engaging with people, engagement to me means a conversation. Like, you are in conversation with people. There's a back and forth. There's a space of listening and speaking, and also like hearing what people are saying and digesting that, and then doing some modification along the way. And so for can you say the question again one more time?
Yes, because I think I may have asked two questions in one, because I really wanted to talk about how the community has shaped the governance of the projects, but also how you've managed the clarity in that governance, because clarity is a huge piece of governance. If people don't know where a project or where an organization is headed, it's very hard to control, right? Very hard to maintain governance over that particular entity. And so how those two things, right, the community shaping what governance looks like, because I know I had to sign a charter as a community partner, right? And then also how clarity has shifted or changed, and how you've maintained clarity in the projects that you have had.
Thank you for that redirection. So that pausing and saying, hold on. I'm going off this way. Let me direct course. But okay, so how community has shaped. So like I was saying earlier, like listening and paying attention has been to community members, and taking in what they're saying has then shaped the course and the direction that we want to go. So for instance, we started with Russell Place of Promise saying that this is going to be Black wealth, focus on generating Black wealth. And we're going to do it through these ways. We're going to do it through housing, and primarily through home ownership. We're going to do it through business development. We're going to do it through workforce and job placement. And those were the three things initially. And as we started to do community conversations with folks, and we started to pull data from the stories that they were telling us from their experiences, but also looking at like big picture, like neighborhood data that was coming out. And we started to just pull from all these different places. It was like, yes, we set this out in this grant to focus on these three areas and doing it through these strategies. but is it right? And presenting out like, this was our plan. Does this make sense? Please respond to this. Does this make sense? And if it didn't make sense at the time, like being able to be flexible and making those shifts. So one example is that we were primarily focused on home ownership as a wealth building tool. And a lot of people are, and that still is important for us. But it was like, not just like, do we get people in houses, but how do we maintain home ownership, right? So how do we like make sure that there's enough money and support around home repairs? If folks have tax liens on their property, that's a way that people, get kicked out of their houses, or they're not able to pass on their homes because they have tax liens. So we need to have some strategy around that and addressing it. And we need to also talk about, if the majority of the residents of the neighborhood are renters, how do we make sure, especially when COVID happened, like, how do we make sure that these renters can stay within their homes, within their, whether it's an apartment or they're renting a house, how do they stay in that? So for us, it was like, yeah, we had originally this vision, but respond to that community. Like, what's your response to that? And what are we also paying attention to that says, actually, yes, stay the course, but think about these other aspects that's part of housing. And so, yeah, that's how community has shaped it. They've also brought so many ideas to us that it's like, we're thinking about how do we like include that in the work that we're doing. And that it's just like really listening to community members, and making those shifts as necessary. The second part of the question, the governance, and that clarity around governance structure, is the grounding around, what do words mean? My favorite question is when people throw out terms and what does that mean to you? Because I can hear governance and I describe it in one way, someone else describes it in a different way. And a lot of terms and words are used and we don't have the same definition. So if we're working on a project together, we're working on an initiative together and really trying to be in partnership, and we don't have the same understanding of like what we're doing, that's going to obviously run into challenges and issues. It's also going to run into a problem when like your values may be different from my values, which is could be okay. But if they are in conflict with one another, your value is, around capitalism and making as much profit as possible, with not caring about the people that are most impacted by your ability to extract wealth from people. But mine is opposite of that. I don't know, we can work together, right? So it's like being really clear on those values, and then that helps guide how you like govern and who you partner with and who you receive dollars from. Because if you don't understand the values of your organization, then you'll get off course. You'll go out of scope. And a lot of organizations find themselves going out of scope, with like accepting dollars from whoever with all these like requirements, or you are in partnership with someone that is acting out of alignment with what your value sets are. And then you become too thin, or like you get stretched too thin, or people perceive your organization in a different way than what you would like them to perceive it. That oftentimes happens because you're not doing the value check, and you're not really holding yourself and holding your leadership team, or you're not listening to community trying to hold you accountable. So governance at the core for me again is like defining things, defining words, phrases, defining your values, defining your mission, and making sure you're creating those documents, those bylaws, those charters, those even your meetings, like how you operate in your meetings, those community agreements, how you're going to treat staff, how you're going to treat community members. If those things aren't in alignment with what you have set out to do, then you need to course correct and be willing to hear from other people to say, this is a little bit off. Let me hold you accountable, sis. Let me like get you back into the right path. Out of love, accountability out of love.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Is there any other advice that you would give to nonprofit leaders about governance?
Yeah, so one of the things that has always irked me when it comes to like leadership, whether it's business or nonprofit, is when you only see that one, the executive leadership in all the spaces, and you don't see any of the other team members. That tells me a lot about your leadership. Like if I
Yeah.
can only say so and so is executive director, I mean they're just running the whole show. That's a red flag, because that
Right.
means you don't trust your people. You don't bring them into spaces with you so they can learn and observe and make those relationships. It also means that you don't have a succession plan.
Right.
You're not thinking about the organization after you.
Mm.
And so if you can't name, if you don't see, you always see that one person show up in every single space, that is the ED, that is the president, the director, and you don't see a team of people behind them or with them on the podium or with them, on the panel, or also sharing the space in front of the room, and they step back, then that is a sign of, like, to me, not good governance.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Or governance that may be good for you, but it's out of control. It's out of trying
Mm.
to control the space, and you don't trust your people. And so I would say to anyone that's in nonprofit leadership, if you really care about the mission and the vision and the heart of your organization, that means that you care about the people and building them up, or building, I don't say building them up because they're already there if you're working with them,
Right.
but like getting them to the place where you all are sharing what you're learning as a leader,
Shared power.
that
Mhm.
you're getting them comfortable in their leadership role. That is a sign of doing succession planning, of making sure that you are preparing them for maybe possibly being in your position or taking a leadership role in another organization.
Wow, Cassandra. I expected nothing less. Gems have been dropped. And these are only snippets of conversations that we're sharing here. I'm not keeping it too long, but I'm pretty sure we could talk an hour about this.
Yes.
However, everyone, if you want to get in contact with Cassandra, and learn more about Wrestle Place of Promise and the work that she's doing, I have put the website on the screen for you, because even if you are not in Louisville, Kentucky, Wrestle Place of Promise is I'm talking about, go to the website and you will be educated for hours. There is a black hole of information that Cassandra and her team has provided, especially on creating generational wealth for Black people. Okay. And so it's very important that you look at that website. If you want to contact her and learn about best practices and how to replicate, if you want this type of initiative and this type of work done in your city, wherever you may be, please do reach out, but do that research on the website first, because they took time to put that together, and it is a wonderful, wonderful resource for everyone. And so I want to thank you, Cassandra, for hopping on the line with me today. And for, even though you said you weren't prepared, I knew you were going to be just fine. I knew you were going to be just fine. And I want everyone else to stay tuned for the future speakers that are going to be coming up and talking about the various different organizational functions, okay, that we do cover in the Strategy Academy. So enrollment is open for the Strategy Academy. That's that virtual strategic planning platform where you can go deeper and learn about strategic planning and really have those skills developed among you and your team in order to plan for the future of your organization. And also, if you need to contact me, that's also the website there. You can book a free consultation so that we can maybe go deeper into what you need. If it's not a virtual product, then there are other ways that you can also build the capacity within your organization. So thank you so much, Cassandra. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to everyone else, I will see you at the next speaker series.